Welcome to the Law School Insider, where we have conversations with students, lawyers, and employers.
Succeeding in law school is something that you must prepare for, not only before you begin, but throughout your law school journey, and that's what this podcast is all about. I am your host, Dr. Christopher Lewis, and I will draw from my over 20 years of experience in the college admission field, as well as bring forth the experiences of others as we delve deeper into the issues. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Law School Insider. I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Lewis. I'm so excited to have you back again this week. This week, we have the pleasure of having Dale Richardson on. And Dale Richardson is a lawyer in Atlanta. He has his own practice, the law offices of Dale Richardson, but he also is the host of the LivetheGoals podcast. And much of what he talks about in the LivetheGoals podcast relates so much to what you're going to be wanting to learn in law school to prepare yourself for success. And he found that as he moved through his own journey, and we're going to talk about that today. So Dale, thanks so much for being with us this week.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris. I'm looking forward to this.
You know, I was really looking forward to talking with you as well. I heard you on our friend Angus Nelson's show in the past, and I was really impressed with the journey that you went on. So to start off today, let's talk about that journey, because you started off as an engineer, and then you went to law school, and then you've gone on from there. So let's just talk a little bit about the journey and what brought you into deciding that you wanted to be a lawyer.
So, I wish that I had a better story behind how I got interested in law. I wish it was some earth-shattering, moving event that happened in my life. But honestly, it goes back to me being a child and being an inquisitive child that asked a lot of questions and talked a lot and was excelling in school and having a lot of people say, "You seem like you'd be a great lawyer." Now, I say that, but there's also a part of me that isn't quite sure. My mother uploaded a bunch of different certificates and pictures a few years ago, and I didn't realize that there was actually a certificate or maybe a hand-drawn little picture that said, when I grow up, I want to be. And there was a blank line, and the line that was filled in there said judge. And this is from preschool. I have no memory of ever doing this. And so maybe there was something that I'd said before then that indicated that I wanted to be a lawyer. But in my memory, it was people kind of pointing me in that direction based off of what they saw in me.
Now, I know that as you went along and you made the decision to go to law school, you found success during law school. And some of that came down from things that you got involved in, things that you did in law school. And the people that are listening to this show are looking for that. They are trying to figure out for themselves, one, do I want to go to law school? But two, what do I want to do in law school to find that success that other people have found? Mm-hmm. And I know that you wrote a book that talks all about this, 33 Keys to Law School Success. And I want to talk a little bit about some of those takeaways, some of the things that you found in that journey that you went on to find the success that you have found in your career today.
Yeah. So Chris, one of the first things I had to do, and, I just talked about being a lawyer was implanted in my mind when I was young, and I didn't have a great story behind that, but I still had to make the decision of whether or not I wanted to go to law school. I did engineering undergrad. Absolutely loved it. I did engineering because I'd met a lawyer before I went to law school in my junior year of high school, told him that I was going to do pre-law in college, and he said, "Hey, every class you've mentioned that you liked was a science class. You don't have to do pre-law to go to law school." And I didn't even know that at that point. And so I went to engineering. That was, quote unquote, my backup plan. When I graduated from engineering, I kind of had a hard talk with myself and did some soul searching and realized that I still wanted to go to law school. And that's why I continued on to law school. What I did that I think some students miss out on is that I put a lot of work into deciding which schools I wanted to apply to. And it wasn't just based off of rankings, although I understood their importance, but a lot of it had to do with the environment that I was going to be in, the teaching that I thought I was going to get from the schools, what was best suited for me. And we're all different. And so there are hundreds of schools out there, but the school that was best for me may not be best for you. But I did that. And one of those things that I used was they've got like Kaplan, they've got U.S. News and World Report, and I think they've got Princeton Review. Personally, at that time, and this is many years ago, I enjoyed the Princeton Review report because it had a lot of interviews in there from students, a lot of quotes and comments from students that were actually at the law schools that told you how they felt about the law schools. And that gave me a better picture of what to expect from the different law schools. And then I don't hold that as gospel. I went on visits and tried to connect with students at those schools to ask them how they felt about the school. So I feel like that's really one of those first steps for anyone that hasn't decided on a law school yet. Figure out what the right school is for you.
And that's not always an easy decision to make because there are so many law schools out there and so many of them look very similar to one another. Now, were there things that you came to find helped you to make the final decision for where you attended law school?
Absolutely. For me, I was in a unique place in my life. My father had passed a few years before that, and I had been someone who was just kind of nose down, getting the work done, putting lots of time and effort. I was a work hard, play hard guy. Now, I partied hard on the weekends, but I worked my tail off during the weeks and even some weekends as well. But I was at a place in my life where I wanted a little bit more of a quality of life. And I get quality of life and law school may not be phrases that tend to go together. But in researching schools, that was important to me, kind of understanding the environment, whether this is a university that had a collaborative kind of atmosphere where students going to be cutthroat. I already understood that's the impression and the stigma that law school has. And so I did look for schools that I believed were going to be a more welcoming environment for everybody. And so that was one. Secondly, I live in a real world and I understand that rankings can matter. Now, I want to throw this out there. Rankings are not be all end all. I do not think rankings have any determination on how good of a lawyer you're going to be. What I do think is that the rankings of school might determine the ease of access to certain opportunities, but then what you do with those opportunities depends on what you do. And so I'm one that says you can go to quote unquote the lowest ranking school to the highest ranking school, and that doesn't tell you where you're going to end up. And so I looked at that. I looked at kind of the community first. Then I did look at rankings to see if there were schools that were higher ranked that I thought still fit what I needed it to fit. And then at that point, I had an idea that I probably was going to practice intellectual property, especially with my engineering background. And so I started looking for that too, to see what schools had some decent intellectual property classes that I might get into. And so those were the things that I hung my hat on a little bit to decide what school that I thought I'd want to end up at.
I appreciate you sharing that because I think that every person goes through their own journey and trying to identify which school they want to attend. And as you said, I think that a lot of people hang their hats on rankings only. And there's so many other questions that need to be asked from what I have come to learn. So I appreciate you sharing your journey.
Yeah.
So people learn from that too.
And Chris, one more thing. It's important to understand how the schools are ranked because if you look at the U.S. News and World Report, that's probably the one that most people go to as the authority on ranking of schools, graduate schools and things of that sort. However, they rank the law schools based off of, things like the number of books in the library, and I got to be honest with you. I get that may have some importance. As a law school student looking at the school, I just assumed they were going to have enough books. And so, it just didn't weigh as heavily in my mind.
That is very important because I know that there are rankings out there too that also base part of their rankings on the comments or the rankings of law school deans as well. So they'll send a survey out to law schools and they'll ask them to rank other law schools. And that's a part of their ranking system too. And if you don't look at the rubric of how law schools are being ranked, you can't say that you're fully informed. So I truly agree with that. Now, one of the things that I want to talk to you about is the transition. You've moved from law school into your career. You've been practicing now for a number of years in Atlanta. And thinking back now, looking back at law school, are there things that you wish that you would have done, accomplished, participated in, things that would have changed some of the success that you have found in your career now for the better?
You mentioned that I wrote a book, 33 Keys to Law School Success. And when I wrote that book, that's essentially where I came from in writing that book. What are the things that I either did right or maybe did wrong or realized a little bit too late that other law school students maybe should know? And here's one of the big points that I want to throw out from the book and that I use now. I as you said, I'm a John Maxwell speaker, trainer, and coach. So I do a lot of coaching and speaking and workshops on goal setting and how to find your purpose and things of that sort. But one of the main things is remembering what your goal is. Why are you in law school? And here's why I say that. It's really easy to get into law school and focus on the day to day, especially your first year in law school. I mean, it's so intense with reading, especially if you're, someone like me who came from a background where we didn't do a lot of, nearly as much reading in engineering as you would do maybe in a history major or pre-law major. And so it was very intense getting all the work done. But if you keep focused on what your goal is, you'll remember, hopefully, to focus on the right things in that journey. And here's what I mean by that. Some people get really caught up, especially if you're at one of the quote unquote higher ranked schools. They get really, really caught up in what that grade may be for that exam or getting on law review. Now, again, I understand reality, and I understand that those things open up doors for you and provide you access. However, for most of us in law school, your goal is to come out and be the best lawyer that you can be so that you can represent your clients to the best of your ability. And there's something that you're interested in. There's some area of law that you're interested in that you want to help people with. And the way you're going to help people is by being a great lawyer. And so there were things that were transferable skills that I thought that maybe I could pick up in law school that would translate later on that they don't really teach you in law school. And so one of those things is that there's no substitution for doing the work. And that applies for law school or anything else. You're going to have to put in the time and the energy and do the work, especially on the front end as you're learning and trying to figure it all out. Secondly, I started to understand that you're going to have juries. You're going to have people on the other side of you, adversarial situations. You're going to have different partners that you may work for. You're going to have all these different situations where you're going to encounter people that don't think like you. And as a lawyer, it's your job to advocate and persuade those people. And you can't do that if you don't have a good sense of how they think. And so I was able and willing to spend my time around people that I did not think the way they thought, right? We absolutely clashed on many different issues and topics, but what a great place to do that and discuss it and try to figure out why is it that you have that opinion and I have this opinion? Why is it that we can start with the same set of facts and end up somewhere that's so different? And it boils down to our life experiences and kind of the premise that we all start with. And law school is a great laboratory to start to understand people, start to have those discussions, and do that research and start to get a vibe of how to communicate with different people to get your point across. There's a way to communicate the point you're trying to communicate to any and everyone, but it might be different for each person. And so that's another thing that I often emphasize to people about law school, about what you can pick up. And that's something that if you go on and you practice law for years and years and years, it's going to be valuable to you. If you decide you're going to switch careers and go to something else, it's still going to be valuable for you. So those are two big things that I point out. And then finally, and one last, so I don't go on too long, is to get involved. A lot of times we say, I'll get involved after I get situated. I'll get involved after I get past this year, or after I, get my job, or after I get married, or after something. But it's important to get involved now. Get involved in the community, get involved with organizations in your school, because those are skills. It may not seem like it at first, but being able to get in a community, get in an organization, and to help and to give and pour into those organizations and communities, and to manage your time to be able to do that, and to have the leadership skills to start taking leadership positions in those organizations. Those are skills that you'll need throughout life. And again, law is a service profession, and you're serving people. And the more you get involved with organizations and communities, the better you get at identifying how to serve people. And so those are just, 3 of the keys that I'll point out. I've got 33 keys in the book, and all of them aren't the type of thing like I'm mentioning now that I think translate to everything. Some of them are very specific about law school, like outlining and so forth and so on. But those are 3 big core tips that I want to make sure I point out to your audience.
Those are powerful tips. And I will put a link in the notes today for all of you to be able to find Dale's book, because I know that with just the keys that he shared, if you truly listen to what he has to say, you're going to learn a ton there. Now, Dale, you've transitioned a little bit even more, and you're now doing some things beyond what you're doing in your legal practice. As you said, you're doing you're doing more coaching, and you're doing more seminars on leadership and leadership development. You're a trainer, and you have your Live the Goals podcast. So you're using your legal degree, your legal knowledge, and all of the other life experiences that you've had in a different way. And I want to talk a little bit about the transferability, or what your legal knowledge and your legal training has done to be able to help you to do these other things that you have a passion for in your life.
I'm blessed to have the engineering degree and the law degree. And so the engineering degree kind of started that transition. That started me on that logical thinking, we'll say, the way to put things together in an order. And law school just reinforced that, right? The way that we're trained to think through a situation, to see all the potential issues in the situation. I know in your first year, we call them like problem spotting, issue spotting exams, right? And so being able to spot issues and then relay that back to information that we have, knowledge that we have that addresses those issues. Now, some of the stuff that I gained or that was reinforced in law school that really does translate over to anything you want to do is, one, being able to identify the issues. You'll talk to so many people in life, in business, in various areas of life that you'll encounter, that they'll give you a lot of information because whatever the situation is, it's so real and close to them that they'll give you a lot of information. So being able to take all that information and boil it down to the material facts is something that's really powerful. And it even helps in making sure you understand and that you're communicating with them when you're able to boil what they've said down to a couple of sentences that is on point with what they were trying to communicate, and to let them know that you understand where they're coming from. So that's one of those skills that you pick up in law school that completely translates. The other, which is very important, is the ability to communicate and advocate for what you believe is best. Now, some people may not realize this, but we are always in a situation where we're advocating. If you're at work and you're an employee, you're advocating to your boss. You're trying to get your ideas to your boss and say, hey, I think this is the best way to do it. Or maybe you're saying, hey, I deserve a raise. When you're talking to your clients, you're trying to help them solve their issues, but you got to get buy-in from them to help them get on board with the way that you think the problem should be solved. And so it doesn't matter that this is the best way. If my client doesn't agree with me, then we're not going to be able to go down that path. And so those skills of being able to communicate information in a persuasive manner and to boil facts down to the material facts and dissect an issue, I found those to be extremely powerful in my everyday life, in my career, in what I've done as a lawyer, as well as what I do as a speaker, trainer, and coach. So that's, I think, one big thing. And then the other one is kind of goes back to some of what I said a little earlier, which is in dealing with different organizations and building leadership skills through organizations. Those skills have been invaluable. I encourage everybody, whether you're in undergrad or in law school, to try to get into some leadership positions. You may not consider yourself a leader at this stage, but you are and you will be required to be at some point. If you're working at a law firm, you're going to need to be a leader at some. If you ever plan on being a partner, you're going to need to be a leader. You're going to need leadership skills. If you plan on having a family, you're going to be a leader. You're going to need leadership skills. This is a skill that you're going to need in every aspect of your life, every area of your life, and you get the opportunity to practice that in law school. You get the opportunity to get things right, to get things wrong, and to learn from those experiences and grow from them in law school. And so those are two of the big things I got. And then the third thing I'll throw in before I kind of wrap up here is what I learned in law school is that we don't know everything, but if you know how to find the answer, if you know how to research and dig and find the answer, and if you learn skills and strategies to do that in an efficient manner, you'll always be able to find the answer. And it doesn't matter what the question is. It doesn't matter if it's a law question or a life question, a goal setting question, or a leadership question. You're going to be able to use that skill that you that you get in law school of being completely lost and having to dig and find out what in the world is going on here. How do I go from being completely lost to having a game plan of how to address this issue? That's another skill that I absolutely picked up in law school and was reinforced in law school that completely translates to whatever you want to do later on in life.
Well, I'm still processing all that you've said because you have shared some great advice today and some amazing hints and tips to help people to find that path for themselves and really to think deeply about the journey that they are on. So I truly appreciate you sharing that today. Now, is there any other hints, tips, resources, anything else that you want to share with people that would help them to find success in either law school or in their career?
Well, Chris, as you know, and you mentioned, it sounds like we're both big fans of podcasts. And that's just an endless resource right there. So I always try to point people in the direction of podcasts There's a podcast out there for just about anything you can think of. I'm so happy that you're doing this podcast for law school students. I wish there were more out there that focused on success in law school. But yours is out there, and I'm sure there may be one or two out there that are in the ballpark. So I encourage people to go listen to podcasts. My podcast, Live the Goals podcast, is for anybody. I try to help people set and reach goals that really matter to them. So that's another resource for people. And then other than that, I think the greatest resource are just people, right? Get to know the people around you, your professors, the other students around you. Get to know them, not just the information that you've got to communicate, but really as a person, get to know the people around you. And you'll be amazed at the wealth of information that people have in different areas of life that you would have never imagined. And as you start to do that, you start to see the different resources that are there for you that are already right there in your grasp. There's a saying that I love that says that there's never a lack of resources, just a lack of resourcefulness. And that's just my reminder that when I kind of think I've hit a wall and I can't find what I need to help me, that it's probably closer to me than I think. And I just need to get a little more resourceful. I need to dig a little deeper, get a little more creative, get out of the box and find out what those resources are. So I've only named a couple, but I'm sure that the people that are listening, your listeners, I'm sure that they've got a wealth of resources right around them if they just exercise a little resourcefulness and utilize the people and the things around them.
Well, I will definitely put a link to your show today in the notes so that everyone can find you. I do encourage all of you to take a listen to the Live the Goals podcast, but also take a listen to some other podcasts too, because I agree with you, Dale, that there are a ton of other podcasts that are out there that will help people to think in different ways, consider different things, be able to live their life in a new way, and prepare themselves for finding success in their own way. So I truly appreciate you and your message and what you're sharing today, but also I appreciate what you have done to be able to encourage others to be able to find that pathway for themselves, because it is so important to be able to get on that path if you're not there right now and be able to be ready for whatever comes ahead.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I appreciate this opportunity, and I'm just really happy to be able to give back to the law school community. I've coached law students before, and there's just so much that you have inside that, so much you want to do to help this world. And that's why most of you got into law school. And so being able to clarify that and put a plan together to make sure you don't lose that on your journey through law school. I love being somebody that's able to help people with that. And again, thank you so much, Chris, for having this podcast to help law students.
Well, that was another great guest this week on the Law School Insider. If you have an interest in being a guest on the show, drop me an email at lawschoolinsider@cooley.edu. And thank you all for listening today. And remember, you have the ability and right to take control of your law school success. I hope you'll continue listening, creating a plan for success that will prepare you to achieve the dreams that you have set for yourself. Talk to you next time. Thanks for listening. You're on your way to being a law school insider. Please subscribe to stay connected and come back again next time as we speak to more students, lawyers, and employers.